Yes, Kat.
Okay, so we're now recording. Thank you guys that are joining, and I'm sure some other people will be joining here. But the main thing is that this is recorded. It'll be in the group. It'll be on the YouTube channel. Lauren, thank you for being here today.
No problem. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and I just learned, unbelievably, and I really feel like I should have known it before, that is your birthday. So I feel especially honored that you're taking the time today.
No problem. It's been a good birthday of doing that much of anything.
That's the best way to do it.
Oh yeah.
Every year I try to, basically do a dinner with close friends, and that's about it. So, um,
Happy birthday, Lauren. Happy, 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 happy.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
all right. Okay, so I guess some people are starting to join in now. So we're going to keep you guys muted throughout this, but we're probably, I'm assuming, Lauren, you have like 40 minutes to talk to me or so.
Yeah, I got 40 minutes to talk to you.
You got 40 minutes, all right? That's awesome.
Like,
Again, on your birthday, I appreciate it.
yeah. Hold on. Let me lock my door because someone just walked out.
Okay, all right. Make sure you get that space, secure. And welcome, Joey.
Hello.
All right. So yeah, while Lauren's locking her door, essentially she is someone that signed up for the course. I'll let her tell you the longer version of the story, but she signed up for the course pretty early last year, not long after I launched the call center CAF program. And she's already was previously an entrepreneur, has her own company, and I'll let her talk more about it. But she was able to create a pretty awesome company, um, and along the way, she had some pretty interesting, innovative ways in which she landed clients, and just the ways she went about doing her business, which I thought were really interesting, would lead to some great insights. So I'm really excited again to be able to spend some time with Lauren today. And
Yes.
yeah, welcome back.
Thank
And for
you.
those of you that are already in the program and are therefore part of the tribe, I'm sure you'll see Lauren, or you've seen Lauren a few times. She's in our weekly calls almost every week. So again, good to have you here. Um, and yeah, I guess I'll just sort of jump right into it. Could you tell me a little bit about, what made you even think about, even thinking about having a call center?
Well, I have this thing about what I call boring businesses uh, that I enjoy. So, people like to go, like in New York, is a lot of, at that point I was there when startup land, as I like to call it, was kind of being built when they thought they was going to make New York City be the next Silicon Valley. So they did all these things. And me trying to get into the ecosystem, I could never understand the concept of a company not making money and intentionally not making money ever, and that being a long-term good thing, because I'd grown up in situations where people had smaller businesses and the point was you wanted to make money you know to keep everything going. So it was a weird that culture of, hey, this is good. I didn't particularly care for that. um, and in terms of getting into it, I always thought business should be relatively practical. So like if there's a problem for something, then you build either service or product to solve that thing. And you do it makes money, you just buy or sell it, you bring on debt if you want to expand it and do whatever you're going to do. That doesn't work in startup land very well. So I always had a big thing about, I rather a business like a laundromat that makes money and own a few of those rather than have a sexy business that even if it made a lot of money, that was always in debt and it's always the stress of trying to feed that monster. And what I knew, because my mother was m- much older than everybody else's mother, she had me late in life, was she had a pension. And when I was, coming up and like going to college and stuff like that, those things were pretty much disappearing. It's like, by the time you get into any type of workforce, that thing called a pension does not either exist in most industries, or if you're getting a government job, a lot of government jobs were transferring out of using pensions and using basically another version of 401ks,
Mm-hmm.
which I experienced that when I did work for the government for my short period of time. And that with getting screwed while, companies and governments are in transition on how they're not going to do X that they promised you when you first got hired. So I already knew that. I was like, if I want to retire, and I didn't want to, because I used to be a church musician as well. I didn't want to be like the mother of the church who's struggling and afraid to pick up the phone because it's nothing but bill collectors. Because she's 80 something years old and grew up in a time where that didn't exist where she lived. So I didn't want to live my elder years like that. So my whole thing was, if you get businesses that are mostly cash flowing and you can have an operator in that business, so you're no longer operating that business, you can have one or two give you enough cash flow to kind of act like a pseudo pension sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And so, yeah, I really love that background. I had no idea that you are spending time as a musician. And I think it's a good point in terms of, some people want the sexy parts of entrepreneurship, the sexy businesses. But, I personally, and I'm sure you would agree, went into this with like a real intention to make some actual money and actually have a career out of this. And, so it's easier to get that done when you work on businesses that make more sense. So, so that mindset, is that what led to you, first considering, I guess, a call center when you heard about me?
Yeah, because I mean, we met accidentally in a Facebook group anyway. You had replied to a post, and I was like, "Oh, you did acquisition," so I was interested in that anyway, because my intention was the marketing agency was something that happened, but it's not something I particularly wanted to do. That came about me being trained as a copywriter and wind up doing client work, and then knowing how to do traffic, and it just became an agency out of that. But it's not
Mm-hmm.
something that I want to stick to doing, nor want to even hire operations managers to run. So the goal was like to get, to eventually sell this stuff off anyway, because I just really wanted to work on my own things and having that pipeline, and acquisitions was one of them, because I had a tutoring business years ago and I didn't know what I was doing. And this was back when you didn't have, Member Mouse or Patreon or anything like that. So you had to build almost custom code things because the tools didn't exist at that time. Uploading videos to YouTube 15, 16 years ago was a hell. Was hell,
Right.
literally. And I had international clients because I took my tutoring business from in person, or dual in person as well as doing it online. So this is before Khan Academy and all that. So eventually I got burnt out. Young age to get burnt out, because I was in college at the same time, and I wind up selling the business and not knowing what the hell I was doing. And
Mm.
now and realizing like years later, like, oh shit, I could have charged a hell of a lot more money. But I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right, right. Okay. So, moving forward a little bit, we get to talking a bit. I know that we chatted for a little bit and you ended up investing in the course. Uh, what happened next?
Um, Wind up investing in a course. Of course, I'm in New York City at that time. That's when New York City went into lockdown. And so like, but before the city officially went into lockdown, where I lived, a lot of folks were like a frontline work, I guess they call them frontline workers, aka blue collar and white collar folks where I lived around. And so I'm already hearing stuff going down, like dock workers and stuff getting laid off or furloughed, and they already like none of this stuff is in the newspaper. So when folks are finding out about this, I'm like, yeah, this is like 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks in the making, because we lived around each other. So I'm like, oh crap, they're closing down Hunts Point. That's a big deal. That's where most of the food for New York City and the East Coast on that end come in.
Oh,
as well as imports of everything. So for the fact they're shutting that part down and they're shutting this down, because these guys came back and they're like, what the hell am I going to do?
Mm.
So I'm like, okay, this is not good. So that starts to happen, and officially everything is crazy. I used to take the subway back and forth. So I was on the subway traveling, and then they said whoever had it was on the subway. I was like, oh god damn, we all got it now. If you know anything about New York City subways and sickness, so I was like, this is not good. And then all of a sudden, a lot of folks around me, family and such, they started being told not to come to work. So all that's happening at the same time. And I'm like, well, my original plan was I'm gonna get the course and then I'm gonna go to events in person. I'm just gonna get clients that way. Because in New York, there's always an event. There's always the real estate folks are having the 3,000 events a week. This company's having events. It's a whole bunch of events. So my initial plan was like, all right, I'm gonna get my first few customers in the next few months by just going to at least 3 events in New York a week and just saying, hey, I got a call center, because no one goes around there saying they have a call center.
Right.
So I figured I had a good shot. That was the original plan. And of
Right.
course, everything shut down. So it was no going any meetup event. So that shut that down relatively quickly. So I kind of had to think of another acquisition plan, which at that point, chambers and certain events started doing Zoom calls. So I started signing up and being at those Zoom meetings that would have been kind of cocktail parties and stuff and such in New York Live, and kind of
Mhm.
joining those over the next few months to start letting people know, hey, I have a call center. We can do this, because once again, everything is shut down. No one is allowed in offices at the time.
Mm.
A lot of people got laid off. But however, the lawyers still needed to do some of the paperwork they were doing, and they're used to having a secretary answer the phone, and all of a sudden they don't have a secretary answering the phone anymore because they laid him or her off. So that's done. So it was like, hey, you guys can answer the phones. I was like, yeah, well, you're answering your cell phone, but you probably got like 30 or 40 calls. And he's like, yeah, I do have a bunch of messages. Well, how about we handle that, take messages and then forward them to you?
Right.
And that's how I started signing off clients, by going to those Zoom meetings and just letting people know kind of what I was doing, um, as one way of getting those clients to substitute for not being able to go in person and grabbing clients. That was one. And then because I had the marketing agency, as we were kind of trying to restructure things a bit, because of a lot of my clients were brick and mortar. So when everything shut down, they wind up shutting down too. So that was kind of like, hey, transferring them to something else. But
Mhm.
even those who continue spending money on, let's say, paid advertising, to not answer your phone was not a was like, before they're like, who, it was like whatever. But now it was like, we can't afford not to answer the phone, because they didn't know when, because at that time they're like, oh, in 2 months, in 3 months, we're gonna open up. And a small business that's kind of over leveraged a bit, they don't got 30 days. A lot of businesses shut down forever in 30 days. So
Mhm.
all of a sudden, the thing you would tell them, like, as a marketer, if you're doing lead generation, is, listen, I'm sending you leads, but you got to pick up the phone. You have to respond to people relatively quickly, became very important. So I was like, listen, before this relationship ends, because you're not picking up the leads and in doing that, um, I can have my people answer the phone, and they will schedule the appointment to talk to whoever the salesperson is, and it will go inside their calendar directly, so they know exactly what times they have available. So it's not just a rush to hire people who you don't have the money at this point, or you're scared to spend to hire. And this will be a much cheaper option, and it will actually, in the long run, save you money on what you're already spending with me to generate these leads. So I got a bunch of my clients at that point to kind of sign up, because they didn't want to waste any more money on their lead gen anymore.
I love that. So, there are two factors at play here. One is you signed up like literally, I think it was like March or April, right? Um, and you're coming in right when the lockdowns are starting to happen, right when COVID is really starting to kick in, and we're hitting pandemic level situations all across, especially in New York, which got hit hard. And so, your in-person plan was like thwarted immediately. And so you already knew intuitively, hey, well, these people are still going to be meeting somehow. So once they started inevitably meeting in virtual conferences, you just showed up there. And you knew then what is still going to be apparent now, less than a year later. Most people that are doing like the conferences and meetings or whatever, you're going to be the only person showing up with a call center if you have a call center. So it's a great value add for a lot of companies. And then also the second component being, having a marketing agency, and really I think an ingenious sort of add-on for people that aren't answering the phone. You're generating them leads, and so now you offer to answer the phone for them, and it's an obvious good value for those clients. I love it.
Yeah, it's worked out pretty well. And like recently, I've had because I'm associated with other people who own marketing agencies, and they're in different specialties. They're like, oh, I need somebody to answer the phone, and like people kind of pass my name around. I'm like, oh yeah, we can do that. And I usually they're like for them personally, like, hey, I need somebody to answer the phone for my clients coming into my agency. I was like, okay, that's fine. And then it winds up turning to another conversation of, hey, could you think you can answer the phone for this funnel we have with these clients? And then it kind of expands from there.
Okay, all right. And so what's it been now? You got to be coming up on a year pretty soon.
Yeah, coming up on a year because I got the course, the website part, like, so I'm used to putting a website. So for me, I just threw that up and
Mhm.
already started that because I was just like, all right, let me just go and find and start the grind and get some clients, because the original plan, in which was thwarted because I intended to have, I was like, all right, by the time August, theoretically, if pandemic had not happened, I was like, oh, by the end of August, I should have, like, over 15 clients, because of the places I hang out. I am the only person in any of those circles that has a call center. That in one that's actively, hey, you actually see the owner of the call center. And then the chamber that I was a part of, in the Bronx, that would have been a good thing that would have been a good thing for them, because they had businesses that actively kind of needed that. But of course, in person didn't happen. So I just had to, switch how I did things.
Right. Okay. So, and you don't have to get too specific, but, now you're almost a year in. Around how many clients, if you're willing to say on the call, around how many clients are you at now?
I'm over 30 now,
Okay, awesome.
so I'm north of 30.
So, I guess the big thing is over the past year, getting involved, getting yourself to over 30 clients, which is fantastic. Um, what had that done for your life, really? I know a lot of people were scared or maybe went through a lot this past year. What did it do for you?
For me, I think it helped me keep some marketing clients that probably would have fell away, because when I mean a lot of my business was small, was a lot of the even market folks I talked to, they're used to working with straight e-commerce businesses, but I always had relationships with a lot of the brick and mortar businesses.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of them as clients, in one capacity or another, because if you do roofing, is a brick and mortar business. So yeah, sure. So I have a bunch of roofing clients, or I had a bunch of clients who are pest control, or they were lawyers or whatever. So a lot of them were brick and mortar. So when things went to a shutdown, where people, I mean, at this point, for those who were not in New York City at that time, people were getting pulled off the train if you cough. Like, it was almost like pandemonium on the
Wow.
train, because we were told, hey, if you touch a surface, you get it. If you breathe, you get it. If you sneeze, you get it. If you touch someone's clothes, you get it. And the subway, New York City subway, cleaning the subway, that right there. So people were in a very big panic. So people were terrified of going into, talking about going to somebody's house to do what? So a lot of that's, you know,
Yeah.
we had people who had like dates, had paid like thousands of dollars to get something fixed in their house, and canceled the appointments because they were scared to go
Yeah.
inside the house. So it's like, we were all stuck. So it was a trying to maintain my the clients that I did have, because a lot of clients I had, their businesses, they stopped, and they couldn't get any PPP money, or by the time that stuff happened, it was too late for them.
Hmm.
So those businesses ended. My e-commerce clients were okay until they couldn't get the products to ship out. So that was another thing. I had e-commerce clients
Oh,
and literally shipping. Once again, I used to live near ports, so when they said things were not coming in, I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. And so I had e-commerce clients that had no problem getting sales, but we had to turn things off because we couldn't ship.
wow. Yeah, so that's a lot of different things that are sort of juggling. So, I guess the main sort of component here, and I realized this too, right? Like we saw it. Um, the main component here is that businesses that were either, hanging on by a string or businesses that were doing pretty well all of a sudden had these huge negative uh, factors come into play that really threaten their businesses. And so where people were lackadaisical about their leads and how many sales they're closing, you were able to enable them to retain more of the fewer leads they were getting, which kept them in business, or at least most of
Right. It was, yeah, it kept them in business because even they had, a lot of them had reduced their staff quite significantly. Like I know one company that laid off 10 people, and not just people who were going out doing work, but literally people who were like answering the phones on the sales side because they didn't think they could keep them. And because no one knew what was like, no one knew when cities were open up, no one knew what was actually going on. And so because of that lot of lack of information, all these things happening, they just, automatically, hey, I got, in order to maintain this thing or we all die together, I have to let people go. And that's what they did.
it.
So now you have the same amount or similar leads, or in some cases, like when it came to certain things a few months later, it was more leads with the same amount of money because more people were like, okay, I'm gonna get this fixed. And now we have a plan of how we're going to enter people's houses, kind of, dressed like we're going to the moon, so to speak, to be sanitary. But now we still don't have those people to sell them on the call. So having someone just to answer, just to keep up, to acknowledge people became extremely important for them.
Right. Okay. Well, that's awesome. And I also understand you had like you moved.
Yes, I did
Like,
move.
so yeah, how was that in terms of sort of maintaining your businesses and any, I guess, impact?
Yeah, well, at the time, my mother passed away. And
Sorry to hear that.
so thank you. At the time they passed away, it took me months to actually get my mother's body for her to be, interned and stuff. Because once again, New York City, they were holding the bodies. The funeral homes were overcrowded, and it was a mess. So,
So,
um, yeah, a mess. So I'm dealing with all that at the same time, trying to do the call center thing. So, um, I was like, I gotta get out of here. I was like, I gotta get out because I was in that maintaining all of the expenses because it's like her expenses and then it's my own stuff that's going on. And remember, we took a revenue hit because I lost a lot of clients because they were just no longer out of business. They were no longer in business.
yeah,
So I took a revenue hit as well. But now I'm supporting more than I've usually had to support without that revenue coming in because of what was going down.
yeah,
So all that's going. I was like, all right, months into it, let me see where I'm going to get out. Because what I didn't want to do is get in another lockdown and be stuck in New York City with that extra trauma again of going through it the first time because my mother died during lockdown and going through any remnants of what that looks like. I was like, if I'm going to be locked down again, I want to be somewhere else. It's going to be somewhere of my choosing,
hmm
not somewhere just because I can't move because with me, some people have hangups with money. Well, I have my own hangups with money, but one thing I like is the freedom of choice to be able to, change the weather with the forecast, kind of a Jay-Z reference.
hmm
You know, you can do that when you have extra money coming in. So some of the money from the call center was kind of supplementing some of the losses that I took from my other business
hmm
as we were trying to, keeping the clients that were still around and working with them as well as kind of easing the other ones who had who had lost their businesses as well as trying to prospect again. So when it was time to move, it was nice that I had a little something to help me move,
Right.
and that came primarily from the call center. So the call center, uh, the funds at that point, it was enough to help assist me in moving.
Wow, I didn't even know that happened, and I heard about your mom, but I didn't realize that all those dynamics were at play. So, again, my condolences on that, and thank you, TF, for saying that as well. Um, but yeah, so one of the things that can really come into play, and I know some of you, during the pandemic, there were businesses that were losing the business, but also a lot of jobs and people being furloughed and laid off. So I guess it would probably nice to have just an additional stream to sort of keep you afloat as you were going through the process.
Yeah, it was extremely helpful because it even got to the point where I had neighbors that I lent money to because they literally like lost their lost their jobs because they worked on the docks or they worked in particular office buildings and no one they hadn't figured out how you get someone to work from like a lot of like stuff that I live online, so it's not a hard thing for me, but the business they work for, they didn't, this was like, what, we can't do anything. And their unemployment, for there are people who took weeks or months to get any type of unemployment because of the
Right.
systems were so overwhelmed. So it was a situation like, hey, I can loan my neighbor $500 because they have the two kids and things like that, because they've been trying to get unemployment for the last 3 weeks when they first got furloughed. And I was happy that I was able to do that, because we had that relationship and they were there for me when my mother passed away, and attempting to try to help me get my mother's body. So it was nice to be able to say, hey, listen, even though like I'm kind of hurting a bit because of what happened and
Mhm.
adjusting my lifestyle in terms of me, like I didn't miss a meal. My rent was paid. I never missed a month of rent. So all my bills were paid. So even though personally felt tight and I was trying to maintain a couple of employees I had because I didn't want to lay them off either,
Mhm.
um, I I was pretty good.
Mhm. Yeah, it's good. I mean, again, having multiple streams, no matter what the size of them is it can only help. So again, I'm really glad that you were able to figure that out. So what do you sort of forecast for the next 6 months to a year in terms of your business?
Um, I expect to. Well, I don't think it's going
Put
any.
you
I
on
don't
the
think it's going to
spot.
down. Yeah, you think? Yeah, put me on the spot. This is not something I thought about, and or at least in that way. Well, based on what's kind of going down, I think the beauty of it as hiring people to to actually be at home, which is a big thing now because there are places that folks are being offered $20 an hour supposedly in other places to wash dishes because they can't get them to go back to the restaurants that they got laid off from like a year ago.
Yeah.
Or places like Home Depot, like everywhere I drive in Texas, I'm seeing like, please work here, hire, whatever. And I'm like, technically, when I put a job call out for, hey, do you want to be at home, and as long as you can answer the phone, I haven't had an issue getting people flooding the applications. So that's
Right.
nice that I don't particularly seem to be having, as of yet, that issue that a lot of other sectors are currently having,
Hmm.
which is a blessing, I will say. So I believe that I probably will hire more people in the future, maybe about 4 to 6 or 8 more, depending on the volume. A couple of things have possibly come up
Okay.
where I might need to hire 2 people who are bilingual relatively immediately, if that works out.
Okay.
So my goal for this is really to grow it so I can fire myself out the business and hire an operations manager to run that day-to-day part. So I'm kind of out of it, and my focus could be, all right, making sure we got more, get more clients and what that looks like versus I'm managing the people answering the phones or managing everything. So I'm just trying to put my make my job obsolete and have enough revenue to pay somebody else.
Nice. I like that. I mean, you're about a year in, so it's a nice thing to be thinking about that at all at this point. If you get there in 2 years, where you're able to create something that you can remove yourself from, that's still growing, and maybe you're just focusing on marketing because that's your forte, anyway, that's a fantastic situation to be in. So,
Yeah,
um,
2 years would be cool. I mean, I'm kind of planning on like 3, 4 years. I personally I believe should be out of it because the way I kind of looked at it is like I'm willing to pay the operations manager more because I'm not taking that much out the company anyway. Because I'm pretty much focusing on what's the efforts I need to do for marketing, what's the efforts to make sure I have enough callers because I have other revenue coming in. So it's not like I need to take a full salary out of it. I particularly don't at this point, but getting to the point where I could take some salary out and then have operations manager. But even if that meant that I take a very small salary and it's operations manager, but I don't have to deal with the day to day, I said that's more than worth it for me. My time is precious.
yeah, no, that's good. I have the same philosophy. And businesses grow uh, better and quicker and more healthily uh, when you can position yourself to take less out. I know for most of the stuff I've done, I start taking out money pretty quickly. um, but again, that's another reason why it's nice to have some flow. Uh, so yeah, so you could say that you're probably a lifestyle entrepreneur more than like a straight up constant hustle entrepreneur.
Probably more of a lifestyle because I'm like, as long as I have X amount of dollars coming in and that's different cash flows and I can have the choice of doing what I please to do, then fine because there's other things I'll do and it's just like longer money, but I have the enjoyment of actually doing it because the whole thing was like, okay, I have this call center, this grows up, this call center main purpose in my life is to take care of me, is to finance the lifestyle, right? So I could shut down another business and focus on the marketing of some other ventures that I got going on. But build call center number two, in which that's prep, where I'm building that solely to sell,
Hmm.
to kind of like fill the coffers for retirement and stuff like that. And because I'm more interested in acquiring businesses that the main problem with them is really, well, they probably just need a better manager overall, and then they need really just to better market and handle lead generation. Uh,
Right, right. And you probably see a lot of opportunities like that anyway through some of the clients you're dealing with in your ad agency.
yeah, I think that's the beautiful part of kind of having an ad agency is that you get to see depending on the niches you decide to go into. I'm in a few, so I get to see how they operate on the inside because I literally need to know in order to have like to measure certain KPIs so we can adjust.
Hmm.
So because I know that, I'm like, oh, this business don't I'm surprised this is still in business. The way they handle things, it's surprising. I was like, you guys are still. I was like, you got mad people calling you and emailing you every day. You guys are still out here. So it's amazing the businesses you go into. You're like, wow, they're still in business. People are still buying from them. This business has been around for 10 years, been around for 20 years. Like, really?
Yeah, yeah, that amazed me too. And it amazed me when I had a few jobs at small companies. I was like, man, my boss or the owner of the company is this incompetent, really, and able to have a business. Well, I got to eventually have a business. Um, so I'm going to put you on the spot again, Lauren.
Here we go.
And I guess on your birthday, I just want to be cruel and put you on the spot. But I want to ask one of those questions that I'm probably going to ask everybody that ever interviews in this context, which is, if someone is starting this type of business or a similar business, what are the three main things you would recommend, or I guess what are your three top tips for
Number
them?
one, oh God. Let's see. Number one, I guess you almost like that Nike commercial. I don't own this quote, but just do it. In terms of people were going, I remember what's the group people were like getting hung up on a website. Now I put up websites fairly quickly. And I mean, like I put them up. I don't pay anybody else to do it. I literally will sit down like, okay, cool, domain, this, that, and the other theme, whatever copy needs to go on, and just have it up. And I put my website up within I think a week. The first version of it, yeah, the first version of the website, because as you know, I added things like we has articles there, there's things there. I changed things, but I did that over time. And a lot of folks were like they were so busy trying to gather stuff and they just never even tackled that. Well, at least get the website up fast. You can always fix it You can change how it looks, you can change the themes, you can change anything you want about that website.
Mm,
Just at least get the basics of it up, because if people, when you start talking to them about this business and they may not be familiar with what a virtual reception is and all that, and you have to go through that education part of it, the last thing you want to do is like lose someone because, hey, oh, what's your website look like? Well, you don't have the website up. Just put it up, and just don't worry if it's not perfect. You can fix it next week and just fix one part of it, work on the page. So my website has gone through many revisions and will continue to go through revisions. But I'm perfectly fine with it. I just needed it up so that people had a reference.
perfect. So that's one.
That's one. Yeah, that was a big one.
That was a big one.
Yeah, that was a big one. Number two. Let's see, what the hell is number two? Okay, I'll talk about some marketing acquisition stuff.
Mhm.
I will say that there are some people. Now I'm more familiar with the marketing. There's many different ways of doing marketing, and it can be very expensive. Marketing in certain areas, and then because you're trying to figure out what's going to work ad wise and how much you need to spend to get this customer. And some people get very turned off with doing any type of paid advertising, and as a result they don't scale as quickly, because the hardest part of advertising is finding the the thing that seems to work right now, and then just mercilessly keep putting as much into it, because we tend to be very short-sighted. We don't look that, okay, so if it cost me $150 to get that lead, but that person converted and they stay with me for 18 months, did I not make my money back?
Mhm.
And that stuff. So with advertising, if you get to the point where you have money to start doing that, don't necessarily discount paid advertising, because paid advertising doesn't mean that it's Facebook, and it doesn't mean that it's uh, whatever on Google's platform. It could mean that you take an ad in somebody's magazine, or in somebody's paper, or in somebody's newsletter of some type, or even a shout out on their podcast as a sponsor and advertising.
Mm,
And those costs range, because people have a narrow mindset. Oh, I can only do Facebook. Facebook may not be the best for this, to be honest.
mhm.
For those who are thinking about it, you might not want to save you some money. You might not want to do that. Um,
And we didn't do Facebook, by the way.
right. Yeah. So anyone who's thinking, oh, I'm gonna do like, no, don't do that. Um, yeah. So, but maybe someone has a radio show. That might be a better look for you. As someone who has maybe you can ask to sponsor somebody's podcast who talks to real estate investors. There's plenty of them out there. Say, hey, how much for sponsorship? Or in some cases, they've never done it before, but they have an audience. Just say, hey, I'll slip you whatever to do that. Is that a possibility? Or
Right.
even getting an interview with them might be a good way for customer acquisition. So just keep it open. It doesn't necessarily have to be like digital ads. It could be a Val pack or whatever. So just keep your eyes open. Don't be afraid for advertising, particularly paid. Just keep your options open.
That is an excellent tip. We haven't even gone over that on any of the calls, so thank you for bringing that up. So that's two hard hitting tips that I love. Uh, what would be a third
Okay. The third one, I guess, is mindset. And I'm weird because I usually don't talk much about mindset, or I'd never viewed it as mindset. So that's probably why I didn't really regard it as a mindset thing. Um, but the biggest danger in your business is really you. It's honestly, it's you.
one?
You are the
Yeah.
biggest danger in this thing, whether you deciding on hiring someone and making a mistake, or deciding whether or not what software to pick, because you're trying to save money or do whatever. The biggest danger to any business venture, particularly this, is you. You will destroy your business before any client's bad review or anything. It will be solely and wholly you due to inaction or action. I will
That's true.
tell you, I will tell you that from the get from this, because some people are like, well, I don't know if I want to do this. I was like, yeah. And then if you take the other route, the shortcut route to doing it, then you faced problems that make everything else more stressful. And then you're ready to pull your hair out. Once again,
Yeah.
you are the biggest bottleneck in your business. So try to be aware that the biggest bottleneck in your business probably is going to be you. And so you might need to change your mindset about how you think about things, how you think about expenses, especially when your business starts to really make money, when you get to the point where, next thing you know, your business is making $500,000 or it's making a million or $2 million, and it's more money than you might have dealt with at a time. People kind of freak out. So I've seen business owners who business is making like $5 million cool in revenue a year. Their profit is like $2.8 million a year. They clearly have enough money to do certain things,
Mhm.
and they're just so afraid because they treat it like it's their own personal wallet. And it's like, no, your business finances wallet, it's its own thing. It is not yours. It could be in relation to yours if you're taking money out of that business or you have to do certain things. So you have to keep those things separate. But it's our mindset that screws all the paperwork up, that screws how we hire, it screws what technology we decide to use and what we're not spending, because I'm not spending, X amount of dollars on that, or I'm not going to hire, or I'm not going to ask that person for a referral because I don't want to seem pushy. It's us. So
Yeah.
if anything else, try to check yourself, even if you need to speak. Sometimes you just need to talk stuff out loud to somebody else, maybe someone who's further along in their business and they kind of gotten out of a little bit of that. But that's going to be really, really important in this business
Yeah.
or in any business in general. So check yourself.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much I agree with that. Um, One of my favorite people named Rohan Gilk, he said this quote. I just said it the other week, re-quoting him, which is a lot of people will trip over dollars to make a cent. And essentially what he means is that he'll people will go after something that they can see right in front of them and ignore all the things that could be greater for them down the road. For instance, oh, I don't want to spend $100 on an ad because I just took $100 out of my pocket. And they can't see how many potential leads or maybe clients that would come from spending that 100. They just see the $100 as a line item, an expense line item. And so they never spend or they never do anything significant in terms of that type of spend as a result. Um, and
Right.
so you're completely right.
Yeah, I mean, it happens more often than not. I deal with it a lot as a marketer, dealing with folks with advertising, because everybody, wants to speak to me. They want to DM me. They want to talk to me. And
Mhm.
then, they tell me all sorts of things on the money, that's and the other. And I'm like, well, I don't know why you talk to me. I'm a business. I kind of have to make money. I have no qualms in charging you whatever the amount is for whatever you're asking. I'm gonna ask you some very specific questions because I need to know. Um, but if you have X amount of dollars and like for instance, a kitchen remodel situation, that could be a kitchen remodel. Average quote for kitchen remodel is like 2,800 or $3,600 per kitchen remodel, and you're afraid of spending you're afraid of spending $3,000 a month in advertising.
Mhm.
That's going to generate you at a low end probably like 15 to 20 clients, and they're afraid of spending that for the month, the cost of pretty much one quote, because their mind can't get over the expense, even though you got 15 quotes ready to be paid for right now. Now it's amazing having to walk people backwards through that and said, does this really make sense? And they're like, well,
Yeah.
no, it doesn't make sense. But a lot of folks, we go through that, whether it's advertising or whether it's hiring that person. Like even now, as I'm preparing in the future to hire an operations manager, I say to myself, I'm trying to fire myself. I don't need to be running this management thing day to day. And I've managed been in charge of a lot of people over my different careers. So I've been a manager, but I know where I lack in management and what the hell I don't want to do. I want to be the owner. I don't want to be the owner and operator. So I'm
Right.
willing to pay someone. I don't care if I have to pay someone $70,000 to manage this business, and because that manager is going to turn around. She's going to come up, or he's going to come up with processes that I didn't think about, and
Mhm.
he's going to figure all that crap out. Is going to do all the things 1,000 times probably better than I can do it because I'm so spread out in doing everything. So if it takes $70,000 for someone to do that, I know I can focus on the thing I'm really good at, which is more like, hey, getting more leads in, and I don't care because I know within a year or two the business she's going to pay, or he's going to pay for himself 2 or 3 times over. But is that initial starting to talk to yourself now like, yeah, I'm getting operation manager, and yeah, I got to pay him. I got to pay him what I got to pay him.
Yeah, that's another good point. Uh, there are people that will try and hire someone, and then they'll say, "Oh, I'm hiring for X position," and they'll just try to find the cheapest person they could possibly find. Rather than investing more money in people that are going to do a better job because they're maybe better at what it is you're hiring them to do. And, again, rather than just seeing it as a line item expense, seeing it in terms of what it can generate.
Right, exactly, and that's particularly important. And I said I'd rather pay more for someone who's good, who's going to improve on all the things that I may not see, or I see but I can put to the side because I can get over. I'd rather pay more and take out less for 2 years
Right.
and have my business run and grow than hire someone cheaper so I can take out more, or whatever, and then have them completely screw up all parts of my business. Then now I have to fix what they do, and have to make a decision of firing that person and trying to time to hire someone else, especially when I already have employees, because God only knows, if you hire the wrong person, you already have a good relationship with employees you have, and then you
Yeah.
hire the wrong person, and then they start screwing up relationships.
Yeah.
Now you might lose those other good people that might have taken you a second to get in order to manage this other person. So overall it becomes more work. And I've worked in situations where I've had really bad managers who we should have never had bad managers, and I see them completely break up offices that were running very efficiently.
Yeah.
So why would I want to repeat that mistake because I'm trying to do dollars and cents?
Yeah. 100% agree. Now, Lauren, thank you so much for this. If you don't mind me asking, I'm wondering if we could take like 5 to 10 minutes to answer any questions that someone might have. I know that Monica, before she came on the call, she said she would have some questions. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's good.
Okay. So for any of you guys on the call, I'm gonna defer to Lauren. But any questions that you guys might have about really anything we talked about, or in general about the business, feel free to ask. We'll take 30 seconds or so to see if any questions come in. And feel free to just either raise your hand. Is there a raise your hand option here? I can't remember.
There
Or just
was.
chat in the, yeah. Oh yeah, there we go. Nathan knows all the features. So Nathan,
I was just about
what
to
you
say, that
got?
was the first name I was going to say, because I ain't heard Nathan's voice. And how long? Where we at, Mr. Philly?
Hey, listen, well, your story is very unique. First of all, thanks so much for dropping all these gems. I was texting Donna like, my girl dropping gems tonight. So this is very special, and I appreciate it. Um, Lauren, in your opinion, if you have somebody who's working 9 to 5, me,
Hmm.
and you've got a call center and you want to, I like what you're saying, but walk me through what you would think in terms of leaving the job and just doing the business full time. Like,
Okay.
like
Doing the
how
business
would
full
you?
time.
Yeah, how would you do that? Because I'm doing it part time,
Right.
and I'm working full time,
Right.
and I wanna get out of that job. Like I want the confidence to do this, but how would you look at it to where maybe the next 3 months I could walk away and feel good about
Oh, that's a good question, because I used to work multiple jobs full time and had side businesses,
it? There we
and,
go.
and ran that way. and ran that way for years, and then going through everything from being laid off from one and be like, oh, that really sucked. And so I ramp up the business that I had on the side anyway, because I did things that I was working probably 90 hours a week or more. I worked every day of the week. I still work every day of the week, but in that capacity, being able to flip mode to jobs that had nothing to do with each other, to running businesses that had nothing to do with the other stuff, and then switching mindsets. Because what happens is when you're in the entrepreneur business mindset is that when you go to work and just see chaos and ridiculousness that don't make any sense,
Mhm.
it starts to really get on your nerves and annoy you because you're like, I don't need this shit. It's like or like
Amen.
yeah, because it just starts like for those if you always worked a job, work for someone else, and then you start the business, it's that shift in mindset you have to make if you're actually going to be able to do it somewhat successfully, because it's a shift. And then when you're doing it at the same time, you find yourself becoming more and more unemployable. Especially if your place of work is going through even more chaos because someone made the wrong hire or something's changed. But if you're trying, now the part is like the transition period, because it is so nice to get a paycheck and not have to be the one to process the paycheck. It is so nice to have HR, even though you probably don't ever want to talk to them people if you have one in the first place, who tells you this is the paperwork you need to fill out. Cool, instead of you by yourself having to figure out what that paperwork is. And so it's a lot of having people do things for you and available. And when things go wrong, you can go yell at someone in HR, not that you should necessarily do that, but and like, oh, it's my boss's fault this didn't happen. Because when it's your own ship you're running, everything comes back to you, even though it's not you all the time. Because it could be, hey, like I had to wait weeks to get a bank account, a business bank account, because there was so much backlog for another bank account. That was a pain in the butt. That was not good for me, right? And you have to deal with, it's you who have to deal with all those things, because especially when you go full time, it just seems like there'll be problem after problem because you're not used to dealing with it on a full time level of what that is, and then you're creating balance. But if you're trying to make the transition of, I got a full time job and I have this thing I'm doing part time and it's my business, and the intention of it, I'm assuming for you, is that you do that full time and that supports you, your family, and what have you. Um,
Correct.
if that's what your intention is, some people just wanted to build this and they want to sell it, and that's what they want to do. If you have kids and you have to pay for the kiddies, and you have a wife or what have you, and you have those expenses, before you jump ship, you might make sure you have some serious conversations with who you live with, because you might find yourself in some uncomfortable situations on your couch, because you made a decision that put um, that put that made your home a living hell, because you like, screw this job, and she said, what, you said screw these bills. I was like, how are we paying for this? Because yeah, so you might want to make sure that you do have one savings that if anything went wrong, you can survive for a few months. To whoever your partner is, if that's your situation, that you let them know and you have those open conversations, because it's not just a you decision, it's a we decision, and sometimes we forget that in trying to get out of our situation.
Mhm.
And that they know that, especially when it comes to healthcare, like who's going to be on whose healthcare, just like some basic things like that, because sometimes we forget that in trying to get out of a place that is killing us. And sometimes the best answer is to switch a job and keep doing that and growing that, and then putting other people in place. I will say, when you're working full time and you have some part time, you're almost more likely to hire people, because your time is so split.
Mhm.
And it kind of
Very
saves
true.
you some time. So before you before we hear you on the call in like a few weeks, about how you sleeping on the couch, or if you can stay with Donald and stuff, you just make sure that you got your expenses covered, when you do make if you do make the leap, that you can do it confidently, because you might just have to lower how your spend is. And that's
Mm.
also understanding what your personal finances, like, what do you really need to live?
Right.
Do you have your emergency money together? That's important. Is your insurance going to be covered and everything else? If an emergency were to happen, can you cover it? And are you able to take money out of your business as of right now? Because if the answer is no, maybe you want to give yourself a timeline. Say, hey, maybe not in 3 months, but maybe in 10 months I can actually make it, or by the end of the year I'm gonna reevaluate where I'm at because I should be able to almost make the jump by then.
Yeah.
So maybe
So
3 months is I know what your situation is, so 3 months might be too tight of a line. It might be what you want to do, but if you quarterly give yourself some time, because it might take a couple of months for you to figure out all your finances and see, can you keep yourself within a boundary of money um, while you're doing this, because that's stuff that I have to do, because if I have a couple of different businesses. If one fails, I know what I can do and how long I can last,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you might want to check that.
Yeah, Lauren, sorry to cut you off on that answer, but I really love that you bring up the healthcare component because that's really a huge thing that a lot of people neglect when they go full time. I just want you to, if you can, just try to address Shay's question. Do you serve a mixed clientele or specific industry of clients?
I have a mixed clientele. At this point, one, the marketing people that are my clients, because a lot of those are brick and mortar, some pest control, uh, and things like that. So that's more mixed because that's my mix of marketing clients, what we're doing it for.
Mhm.
And then I have on the other side, I have a few law firms or individual lawyers themselves that I'm currently serving, as well as I got a couple of accountants now, and now some other marketing agencies where I'm actually handling their phone calling for their office. And now it seems like maybe some of their other client funnels.
Nice. All right. And then um, thank you for that. And then just Monica has her hand raised. She said before the call that she was gonna have a question, so I want to make sure she gets
I
this
keep hearing
question
about Monica have all these questions.
in. Yeah, Monica, what's going on? What you got?
Okay. Um, First of all, Lauren, thank you so much for sharing with us today. This has been great. So my questions really hinge around marketing. Right now, and I'm glad you guys said, don't run Facebook ads because I'm literally running them now and I'm getting like trash, people looking for jobs or just like a bunch of clicks. And then, of course, nothing is coming from that. Um, but you did give me a couple of good ideas about the asking someone like if they have a podcast or whatever, if you could put an ad there, and then also the value pack. While you were talking, I was looking it up to see how to go about that. So I guess because right now I'm still in pre-launch, so with the two leads that you threw out there, should I focus more on one or the other, or should I even take it to the old school and just do like the mailers through like Vistaprint or whatever, and just for like the local companies to go ahead and get some type of traction before launch?
What I will stop running the Facebook ads. That's just not a good
Yes, it's
idea.
terrible.
Like, yeah,
It's terrible.
yeah, like that is like I could stop you from there. Um, Google AdWords is relative. Don't yeah, I want to do that either. When it comes to Valpaks and stuff, the targeting usually is broad for like homes.
Mm,
So each one kind of runs semi-independently. So whatever area you're looking at will kind of deserve. They'll try to sell you on whatever their marketing mix is, but Valpaks in terms of companies, they're almost regional. So depends on where you're going will depend. Sometimes determines the price of what they charge and
mhm,
what their demographic looks like. So you just want to be quite aware because you're looking mostly at businesses. So if you're in pre-launch mode, I would definitely look at different chambers of commerces. It
mhm,
doesn't have to be always your local one. If you're in a city that has multiple, start inquiring there because they do, when they have events, they do sell spots if you want to invest that money. I'm not saying you always should. I didn't buy a spot, but some of them have newsletters that go out monthly or
Mm-hmm.
semi-monthly, and which it goes out to all their members. So it might be worth spending the money to have your business advertised in those newsletters
Okay.
as well, that do go out, because people don't even realize that they do. So you're not you're not confined to your city with this. You can go to multiple cities or places and just ask a few questions like, hey, I have a call center, I think I'm interested in your chamber or whatever, or and they'll give you the information. So it's not such a problem. So reaching out to them would be a good idea. Any other affinity groups within business, like women-owned groups or veteran-owned groups or whatever minority else owned groups or stuff like that, or even looking at different industries that are having conferences,
Mm-hmm.
um,
And
would be a good idea as well.
Okay.
yeah, one tiny thing, and that's one of the beautiful things about conferences being virtual right now. You can be at all of them, anyone that you need to be without having to be physically present because they're virtual. So
Mm-hmm.
your availability and reach in terms of getting in front of those people is better.
Yeah, it is, because I did a lot of virtual conferences. I've sat through I was like double or triple books. I was somewhere in the morning at like a virtual tea that they were having with the women's conference, and like, hey, mine was there, and then like a couple hours later at another one that had to do with HVAC units, and they were doing whatever the hell they were doing, and then at another one in the afternoon. So that's the one thing about the virtual ones, and this is without me paying for a booth. I showed up, and then in a networking thing, because there's none of the business owners there. I just want to make sure I can have that interaction. Like, hey, I have the call center, and I'm the only one there who has it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can. The first thing I did in pre-launch, because remember I lost the ability to go to actual events and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, reach out to the different chambers. Reach out to those different programs. Very few people have call centers. Everybody has every other business except that. That is a good idea, because once they know that you do that, even if you have an email, you just, hey, thanks for talking. You'll get referrals. I've gotten referrals from doing that, a lot of that in the last few months in the beginning when I was first starting. So
Okay.
don't be afraid of doing that first.
Okay.
So you'll quickly become known as the call center person, that's for sure.
Yeah, you'll be the call center lady real quick.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to me. They're like, oh, call center. I'm like, huh? I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
Cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No
Well,
problem.
so yeah, again, great question, guys, and thank you for all of you that have been on the call and have stuck around. Again, this is recorded, so this will be available in the group for you guys to rewatch. I'm gonna upload it to the YouTube channel. We're gonna be hopping on our, I don't know, Lauren, you don't have to be on that one if you don't want, but we're gonna be doing our weekly tribe call in about 8 minutes. So I'm gonna have to cut this one short. But again, Lauren, huge gems. I randomly asked you to do this interview and you said sure, and then you came on and dropped some monster gems. So really appreciate it, huge value. And congrats again for creating something. You're helping businesses get through troubled times and providing real value. You're able to provide, value to people in your sphere of influence, helping your neighbors, that type of deal. And so it's really awesome what you're doing. And Godspeed for you in terms of growing your business and taking yourself out of it. So again, thanks a lot for being here. And thank you all for watching. And we'll see, for those of you in the tribe in the program, we'll see you guys in about 6 or 7 minutes on the tribe call.
No problem. I'm really enjoying myself. Cool to answer questions. See you guys who are there in a few minutes.
All right. So have a good one, guys.
See y'all.